Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know that there will be a few more people logging in as we get going here. But we do have a lot of information to go over, and I want to make sure we have enough time for questions and all of that. So to get going, I'm going to actually take me off camera. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I realize we have limited time to share a great deal of information, so I'll get started. First, I'd like to introduce a few ROV staff members from our executive division. I believe we have Assistant Registrar of Voters, Virginia Bloom here. From our Candidate Services Division, we have in attendance myself, the Elections Division Coordinator, Bren Lair, and then our Election Specialists, Luella Sabigan, Mariana Kankina, and Cassandra Hevia. And then from our County Council, we also have in attendance, I believe, Nick De Fiesta. And then from the courts, we have Lisa Herrick, I think should be coming online here. So, and then their assistant, general counsel, I believe, as well.
Hi, Bren. Jamila. I just joined as well.
Oh, great. And Jamila Bencato is also here as another deputy county counsel.
I also just joined as well. Bren.
Oh, and
Matt Morales, Registrar of Voters.
Yes, thank you, Matt. So we might have more people join in part of the ROV. We also have a couple of ballot layout division staff here, Liz Oviedo and Lillian Tsai, who are the ballot layout gurus, and we'll also be providing some information to you all later on that. So getting started. On this slide, you'll find our agenda for today's presentation. In the following slides, we'll be sharing information related to the signature in lieu period, declaration of intention period, nomination period, write-in petition process, and go over other nomination documents to be submitted during the nomination period, as well as your ROV context. And then we'll wrap up with last-minute questions and answers. As a reminder, when filing your documents at the ROV's office during the declaration of intention and nomination periods, please be sure to use only the forms issued by the Registrar of Voters office. Forms printed from other websites like the Secretary of State will not be accepted. Between each section of the presentation, we'll prompt for questions. However, to keep the presentation flowing smoothly during our limited time together, we ask that you hold questions until the end of today's presentation. Myself and other CSD staff will also be checking for questions in the chat, and we'll address them as quickly as possible. Moving on to our calendar of important dates to remember, the signature in lieu period for the June 2nd, 2026 primary election begins December 19th, 2025 and ends February 4th, 2026. This is an optional period for candidates to submit signatures of valid registered voters to offset their filing fee, and these signatures will count towards your nomination signatures needed in order to qualify. The declaration of intention period begins January 26, 2026 and ends February 4th, 2026. It's important to remember to please file your declaration of intention and the sworn statement of qualifications form on or before February 4th, 2026 by 5:00 p.m. If the Registrar of Voters office does not receive your forms by end of the declaration of intention period, you will be unable to file the necessary documents during the nominations period, and you will not be eligible to qualify as a candidate. Additionally, your filing fee will be due at the time you file your declaration of intention. The declaration of intention extension period begins February 5th, 2026 and ends February 9th, 2026. During this period, any candidate other than the incumbent can file a declaration of intention form and sworn statement of qualifications form. The nomination period begins February 9th, 2026 and ends March 6th, 2026. During this period, you'll file all other required nomination documents to qualify as a candidate. The official canvass of votes and certification of election results will be held on July 2nd, 2026. Please keep in mind that judicial seats remain off ballot for both the direct primary and general elections unless a candidate other than the incumbent files nomination paperwork during the regular nomination period or the extension period, or if a qualified petition is filed with the ROV that forces a judge's name to either the primary election or the general election to allow for a write-in campaign. We'll speak more about this in the slides coming later. If you intend to campaign and raise funds in efforts of your candidacy, along with any semi-annual statement periods, there will be two FPPC pre-election statement due dates. First due date is April 23rd, 2026 for the reporting period January 1 through April 18th, or the day after the closing date of the last statement filed. The second due date is May 21st, 2026 for reporting period April 19 through May 16, or the day after the closing date of the last statement filed. Additionally, if you have an open campaign committee, then you'll also have a semi-annual statement due on February 2nd, 2026 for reporting period July 1, 2025 through December 31st, 2025, or the day after the closing date of the last statement filed. As a reminder, please file your FPPC forms with the Secretary of State and provide a copy to the ROV. On this slide are links to useful resources. The June 2nd, 2026 primary election resources webpage includes information such as lists of unofficial qualified candidates, including write-in candidates and candidates who have pulled signature in lieu forms. An abbreviated calendar of all important dates to remember throughout the election cycle, certain candidate forms that can be released to the public prior to the nomination period, the candidate guide, and other links to resource web pages such as the Fair Political Practices Commission and the State of California Election Codes websites. At this point, I'd like to check in if there are any questions, and if none, then I'll begin sharing information relating to the signature in lieu and declaration of intention periods. Yes, Helen.
Hi, thank you. Are there written materials that we can be sent or be provided that we can print out for ourselves that have all these dates?
Yes, the candidate guide, when you come in is, well, it's also online. And I can give you a link. I can send you a link to that as well. It's also on the election webpage that I sent to you, or that was sent to you, that's titled How to Run for a Judicial Office. All of that information is there. That also includes all of the information that we're speaking about today. I think
So
more.
I am not aware of having received a link or any other materials. It would be very helpful, at least to me, if these could be sent again. Thank you.
Sure, of course. And I believe Luella just put that in the link or in the chat for you as well. And I will send everything out to Kimberly, who can then forward it again to all the judges.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. So we'll now discuss in more detail the signature in lieu period. As mentioned earlier, the signature in lieu period, also known as a SIL, opens at 8:00 a.m. on Thursday, December 11th, 2025. Actually, that's not correct. It opens on December 19th, 2025, and ends on Wednesday, February 4th, 2026 at 5:00 p.m. This is an optional filing period that will allow candidates to collect signatures to offset their candidate filing fee. A sworn statement of qualifications, also known as an SSQ, will also be issued and may be filed at the time SILs are pulled or at the time of the filing of the declaration of intention. The ROV will accept cash, check, cashier's check, money order, credit, and e-check. The candidate filing fee is calculated at 1% of the judge of the Superior Court current salary of $244,727, which is effective through June 30th, 2026. If candidates desire to offset their entire filing fee of $2,447.27. They will need to collect a total of 7,342 signatures of valid registered voters. Seal signatures shall also be applied toward the required 20 signatures needed during the nomination period. Seal signatures do not need to be filed all at once, but can be submitted throughout the signature in lieu period. Candidates can bring in petitions on different days during the seal period, and we'll check the signatures as soon as possible and get back to you in a timely manner to ensure you stay updated on the number of valid signatures collected during the seal period. However, the ROV does recommend you submit as many signatures as possible, and at the same time, to ensure you meet the requirements of collecting enough signatures in a timely manner prior to the deadline to submit. That is your goal. Here is an example of the petition in lieu form, also known as a signature in lieu or seal form, and some facts about the petition circulation period. Keep in mind that circulator's residence address is required to be included on a petition declaration. So if you are concerned about reducing the amount of public exposure of your residence address, then we recommend you do not circulate your own signature in lieu or nomination paper petitions. Elections Code sections 104A, B, and C further states that wherever any petition or paper is submitted to the elections official, each section of the petition or paper shall have attached to it a declaration signed by the circulator of the petition or paper, set forth in the circulator's own hand the following: the printed name of the circulator, the residence address of the circulator, giving street and number, or if no street or number exists, adequate designation of residence so that the location may be readily ascertained, the dates between which all the signatures to the petition or paper were obtained. Each declaration submitted pursuant to this section shall also set forth the following: that the circulator circulated that section and witnessed the appended signatures being written, that according to the best information and belief of the circulator, each signature is the genuine signature of the person whose name it purports to be, that the circulator is 18 years of age or older. The circulator shall certify the content of the declaration as to its truth and correctness under penalty of perjury under the laws of the state of California with the signature of the circulator's name. The circulator shall state the date and the place of execution on the declaration immediately preceding the circulator's signature. We'll now discuss in more detail the declaration of intention period. The filing fee of $2,447.27 is due when the declaration of intention, also known as a DOI, is filed. A sworn statement of qualifications, also known as an SSQ, will also be issued and may be filed at the same time seals are pulled or at the time of filing the DOI. The ROV will accept cash check, cashier's check, money order, credit, and e-check. Here is an example of the DOI and the SSQ. In accordance with Elections Code Section 8023A, both documents must be filed in the ROV's office not more than 14 days nor less than 5 days prior to the first day on which a candidate, excuse me? Sorry, I lost my track. Okay, 14 days, no more than 5 days prior to the first day on which a candidate nomination papers may be circulated or signed. This means you must have your DOI and SSQ forms filed with the ROV between January 26, 2026 and February 4th, 2026, so that when the beginning of the nomination period opens on February 9th, 2026, ROV staff can issue nomination documents to you. When signed and filed with the ROV's office, the declaration of intention will declare a candidate's intention to become a candidate. This is a required document to be filed during this filing period. As a reminder, this document cannot be accepted along with the other nomination documents that will be filed during the nomination period. Additionally, no candidate for judicial office is required to state his or her residential address on the DOI. However, if you do not provide your address to an election specialist on the form, then you must provide it to our office for verification of eligibility at the time the form is filed. In accordance with Elections Code Section 8023B, in the event an incumbent does not file their DOI to succeed to the same office by February 4th, 2026, then that seat goes into extension between February 5th, 2026 and February 9th, 2026, and any person other than the incumbent or an authorized agent of the incumbent can file a DOI no later than the first day of filing nomination papers. Another reminder that along with the DOI, you will be required to file a sworn statement of qualification. This document provides that the candidate has met the qualifications of Article 6, Section 15 of the California Constitution, that a person is ineligible to be a judge of a court of record unless for 10 years immediately preceding selection, the person has been a member of the state bar or served as a judge of a court of record in this state. At this point, I'd like to check in if there are any questions, and if none, then we'll begin sharing information relating to the nomination period. Okay, we'll move on.
Sorry, I have a question.
Oh, sure.
Yes, just go back really quickly to the providing your home address. You said we don't have to put it on the form, but we have to give it to you. Is there like a different form to give it to the registrar of voters?
Typically, what we will do is take it down. We don't like to write it into the anywhere in the form, but we will make a copy of it. And I'm not sure. I think, Luella, can you share more about how you guys do that? Because I think we don't want to put it on the serve, correct?
Yeah, definitely. But they can put it in the post-it and give it to us, and we can give it back to them, or they can give us the information verbally as well.
Got it. Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, we just try not to include it anywhere in the forms because they are public record.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions before we move on?
Just very briefly, and I apologize, I showed up a few minutes late. Could we get the PowerPoints via email after this?
Yes, absolutely. I will be sharing with Kimberly this recording, as well as there's a PowerPoint, a candidate guide, and all additional information that you'll need on a web page that I prepared that has recordings on there as well. So I'll get that all to Kimberly, and she can then send it out to all the judges so you have that information. And
Awesome.
we're also
Thanks so
here
much.
we're also here to answer any questions, so you can give us a call.
Okay.
And we'll share that contact information at the end of this presentation.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I'll go ahead and move on to the nomination period. As a friendly reminder to please file your declaration of intention and sworn statement of qualifications between January 26, 2026 and February 4th, 2026. These documents must be filed 5 days preceding the nomination period. As you can see on this page, the nomination period begins at 8:00 a.m. on Monday, February 9th, 2026, and ends at 5:00 p.m. on Friday, March 6th, 2026. Please remember, when you are ready to file your nomination documents, you'll be required to file all nomination documents at the same time. We'll go over all required and optional nomination documents to be filed over the next few slides. During the nomination period, a nomination paper is required and must be filed at the same time as all other nomination documents unless signature requirements are fulfilled during the signature in lieu period. Here is an example of the nomination paper. It looks very similar to a petition in lieu paper, so please be sure to use the correct form during the intended period. Keep in mind that if a candidate has collected at least 20 signatures of valid registered voters during the sale period, then no additional signatures are required during the nomination period, and a nomination paper will not be issued by an election specialist nor filed during the nomination period. Otherwise, you may collect up to 40 signatures during the nomination period and submit to the ROV's office for verification. At the same time, you file your other nomination documents. All signatures must be from valid registered voters in the county of Santa Clara. And again, you must obtain 20 valid signatures of registered voters to qualify to be a candidate. Article 6, Section 16B, judges of superior courts shall be elected in their counties at general elections except as otherwise necessary to meet the requirements of federal law. Any judicial seat wherein the judge was previously an unopposed incumbent, his or her name may not appear on the ballot unless forced by petition to allow for a write-in campaign. I'll discuss this in more detail later in the presentation. However, if the incumbent and one or more eligible candidates file nomination documents for the same contest, the judicial seat will be on ballot and include a write-in campaign. Article 6, Section 16C, terms of judges of superior courts are 6 years beginning the Monday after January 1 following their election. Thus, your term will begin on January 4th, 2027. If a vacancy occurs during the 6-year term period, the vacancy shall be filled by election to a full term at the next general election after the 2nd January following the vacancy, but the governor shall appoint a person to fill the vacancy temporarily until the next regular election. During the nomination period, a declaration of a candidacy form, not to be confused with the declaration of intention form, otherwise known as a DOC, is required to be filed with all other nomination documents. In accordance with Elections Code Section 8028A, a candidate shall not remove a declaration of a candidacy form from the office of the elections official, and the elections official shall require all candidates filing a DOC to execute the declaration in the office of the ROV or with a notary public outside of the office of the ROV, if an authorized representative of the candidate picks up the nomination documents on behalf of the candidate. Additionally, Elections Code Section 8028B states that a candidate may, in a written statement signed and dated by the candidate, designate a person to receive the DOC form from the ROV's office and deliver it to the candidate. If a candidate requires this form, please be sure to inquire with an election specialist. Our form, in addition to the declaration of candidacy, allows for all nomination documents to be issued and filed by an authorized agent of the candidate. The form also indicates that the candidate is aware that all documents, including the declaration of candidacy, must be properly executed and delivered to the ROV's office by the 88th day prior to the primary election, which is no later than March 6, 2026, end of the nomination period. On the first page of the DOC, the candidate will include the name of the office sought along with his or her printed first, middle, and last name. Please be sure to include any hyphenated last names only on the last name line. Please also print the approved ballot designation exactly as it appears on the ballot designation worksheet. Moreover, if you have a character-based name, please check the red box and fill out the preferred transliteration form issued by the ROV. Please also fill out the section that includes addresses, telephone, fax, email, and/or website information. Keep in mind that the ROV will publish one of the addresses listed on your DOC on the ROV's website. Please be sure to check each appropriate box to indicate which address you wish to be used for publication purposes. If no box is checked, the first address listed and provided will be published. If a day telephone number, fax number, email address, or website is provided, that information will also be published. If an evening telephone number is provided and is different from the day telephone number, it will not be published and will only be used for ROV use. Judicial candidates may put the word verify under residential address if eligibility has already been checked. An alternate option is also available to indicate that you do not want any information published. You will also be asked to fill out your qualifications in section 4 of page 2 and take an oath of office. If you do not take your oath of office at the ROV's office, then you must have the document notarized as to the validity of your identity. A candidate statement may be purchased for inclusion in the County Voter Information Guide, also known as a CVIG. The candidate will receive an email from our ballot layout division requesting review and confirmation of their statement that is in the same format as when it was submitted to candidate services at the time of filing. The review will need to happen within 24 hours of receiving the email. During the 24-hour review period, no additional changes can be made after the filing of the candidate statement. The ROV will accept cash check, cashier's check, money order, credit, and e-check for purchase of the candidate statement. I'm going to stop for just a moment and ask that Liz Oviedo speak towards the review period, the 24-hour review period.
Thank you, Bren. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Liz Oviedo with the Election Division Coordinator for the Ballot Layout Division. The Ballot Layout Division conducts an author review process. All candidates that filed candidate statements to be printed in the County Voter Information Guides are given an opportunity to review their final format of their candidate statement prior to printing the guides. Please be on the lookout for an email from SEC Ballot Layout. The title of the email will be County of Santa Clara Formatted Candidate Statement Review. And this review will take place around March, the week of March 23rd. And we ask you to review, and if what we're presenting it doesn't match what you submitted, or there's a few minor edits, which we typically prove thoroughly. But if there's an edit, we would be able to do it at that time. At this point, we cannot make any changes if it differs from what you submitted at the time of filing. And this is all for me. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is just required. The candidate statement of qualifications is only required if we do appear on the ballot. So if we are challenged, is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Can I follow up on that question, please?
Yes.
So we may not know at the time that we would provide the deposit and the statement whether there is going to be opposition, or do we definitively know by then whether that's the case?
No, you wouldn't know by then. You wouldn't know until the end of the nomination period. Well, actually, the end, if there is a someone filing during the declaration of intention period, you would know at that point, because everybody has to file during the declaration of intention period. So that's your first period that you would know if you're being if you're running opposed with somebody else.
So that means you're going to know by the 4th of February, one way or the other,
Correct.
right?
Yes, February 4th.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm sorry to recap, and you just did this in the previous slide, I think, but this has to be filed during the candidacy period, and that would include the 4th, right, of February?
The end of the candidacy period, yes. So you can file your statement when you bring in all your other nomination documents, if you know. So it's an optional, you do not have to file it. You can choose to file it if you like, but you don't have to if you know you're not going to be on the ballot. Now, just remember that there, and we'll talk about this a little while later, that there is a period for you to, that a petition might be filed, forcing your name to the ballot. But you will have an opportunity at that time, if you wanted to file a candidate statement, because it has to be filed prior to certain dates. So, but we can talk more about that later, because there's a lot of information about that I can share. Does that make sense? Or did you have other follow-up questions?
I think I understand. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, of course, yes.
When you're talking about the petition, you're talking about a write-in candidate, correct?
The petition, well,
The later deadline,
yeah, yeah, there's a petition that will force a judge's name. Someone outside, anybody from the public can come in and file a petition to force a judge's name to the ballot in order to create a write-in. And so we will speak to that later on in the presentation, but essentially, if that happens and the judge's name goes to the ballot, it has to be within 10 days after the nomination period for the June election, and within by E83, I believe, for the general election. So at any point, you may have an opportunity, if you choose, to file a candidate statement at that time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Helen,
Bryn?
did you? Yes.
I have a question. Thank you. Having done this twice before, my recollection is that the candidate statement is always an optional thing, correct?
Yes. Yes, that's
Thank,
correct.
thank you.
You're welcome. Virginia?
No, I wanted to acknowledge Helen. Yes.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay. So, I think I'm on here. A candidate statement may be purchased for inclusion in the County Voter Information Guide. Did I already read that part? I lost track. Yes, we already read that. Okay, so here is an example of the candidate statement of qualifications form. The candidate will include his or her name and office sought, as well as how he or she would like their name transliterated. Additionally, the candidate may use the second page to add a statement or attach a separate document to the form. Keep in mind that format guidelines are also included with the form and require your attention to ensure you use the proper format when writing your statement. Here is an example of those format guidelines along with references to respective election code sections. The estimated 200-word candidate statement deposit is $2,450. Payment is due when a candidate statement is filed. Please keep in mind that the candidate statement deposit is an estimated cost only. Our fiscal division will evaluate election costs later after the nomination period. Therefore, the candidate may receive a refund or be required to pay an amount over the amount of the deposit. You'll be notified of any refund or requirement to pay additional funds towards your statement about 1 to 2 months following the certification of the election on July 2nd, 2026. If you file your candidate statement and no one files to run against you, you will have the option to withdraw the candidate statement and get your deposit check back. However, if you don't file a candidate statement and someone does file to run against you, you will not have the options to submit a candidate statement after you have already filed. This is different for when a petition is filed, though. At this point, I'd like to check if there are any questions, and if none, then I'll begin sharing information related to ballot designations.
I have a
Amber.
question. Thank you.
Yes.
What steps do we need to take to get the refund?
You would just let us know you come in and you withdraw your candidate statement with an election specialist, and then we typically don't cash those checks right away. We can give your check back, or we can shred it for you if you don't want to come into the office. It's if it has for some reason gone to has been deposited, then our fiscal division will provide you with that refund.
Okay, I had one other question, and I apologize if this was asked already, but can we be our own circulator?
You can. You can, however, just keep in mind that circulators do need to include their address and information on the circulator form. So if you are concerned about public, because that is a public document, if you're concerned about having that information, shown, then you would not want to be your own circulator.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bren, there's a question in the chat to please explain the declaration of intent versus the nomination period and the filing of the candidate statement period.
So let me go back to the declaration of intention. Okay, so your declaration of intention is going to basically state that you have been, let's see, where's it at? Filed with the county elections official in which the candidate is required to file his nomination papers. Well, let me see. It's just declaring your intention to run as a judicial office under Elections Code Section 8023. And then
it is
also
a required document, and if any incumbent is going to be challenged, it is during the declaration of intention period that this document would have to be filed. Therefore, the incumbent would receive notice if they're checking our candidate list that someone has pulled papers to challenge them.
And also the sworn statement is you sharing that you have been a judge of the court of record for at least 10 years immediately preceding that information. So you'd have to be a member of the state bar and serving as a judge of a court of record for at least 10 years.
So yes, the declaration of intention period closes on the 4th of February, and then the nomination period is after that, where the candidates have the option of filing a candidate statement. So all the incumbents would know ahead of time if in fact they're being challenged.
And the nomination period is just declaring that you're being nominated because you do have to submit your 20 signatures of qualified, valid, registered voters. And that is just declaring that you have been nominated. Back. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. So we're going to now speak about the ballot designation. A ballot designation will allow a candidate to share with the voters information about themselves. Guidelines for filling out the worksheet include words designating the city, county, district, state, or federal office or job title held by the candidate at the time of filing the nomination documents. The most common ballot designations used by seated judges are Judge of the Superior Court Judge, the word incumbent, if the candidate is a candidate for the same office held at the time of filing the nomination papers. No more than 3 words designating either the current principal profession, vocation, or occupation, or the principal profession, vocation, or occupation during the calendar year immediately preceding the filing of nomination documents. Additionally, a ballot designation made pursuant to subparagraph A of paragraph 1 or paragraph 2 of Elections Code Section 13107 shall also contain relevant qualifiers. If the candidate is an official or employee of a city, the name of the city shall appear preceded by the word city of. If the candidate is an official or employee of a county, the name of the county shall appear preceded by the words county of. If the candidate is an official or employee of a city or county, the name of the city and county shall appear preceded by the words city and county. If the candidate performs quasi-judicial functions for a governmental agency, the full name of the agency shall be included. An example might be County of Santa Clara District Attorney. Candidates may combine words with current principal profession, vocation, or occupation. An example might be lawyer, accountant, or lawyer, accountant, father. Candidates for judicial office who are active members of the state bar and employed by a city, county, district, state, or by the United States can use ballot designations that include words designating the office or actual job title held by the candidate at the time of filing nomination papers. An example might be attorney, attorney at law, lawyer, or counselor at law. Here's an example of the ballot designation worksheet. You'll notice at the top of page 1 that the worksheet provides 4 specific instructions as follows. This entire form must be completed or it will not be accepted and you will not be entitled to a ballot designation. Do not leave any spaces blank. If information requested is not applicable, please write NA or use a dash in the space provided. Otherwise, the information must be provided. Please keep in mind that upon filing this worksheet, the document will become a public record. Please ensure that all candidate and attorney information is filled out completely. If any spaces are left blank, such as for a mailing address or email address, then enter NA or use a dash. Do not leave a space blank. Additionally, on page 1, you'll find a section to add a proposed ballot designation and 2 alternate designations. Please add at least 3 designations. If a proposed designation does not comply with the elections code, we will review the first alternate and, if necessary, the second alternate designation and choose which designation to be used, then provide notification to the candidate which designation was selected. Most important to remember is to fill out in detail justification for the proposed and alternate designations. For each designation, the candidate will have 3 opportunities to justify why they would like to use that designation. For instance, if the candidate is using lawyer, accountant, father as the proposed designation, fill out all 3 sections on page 2 to justify why each of the individual words in the designation is considered your principal profession, vocation, or occupation. Provide job titles, start and end dates, employer information, and who the ROV might call to verify this information. At the bottom of page 2, consider filling out the checklist of the 12 questions that will assist with determining if the designation is eligible. Then sign and date the form. Complete page 3 only if 1 or more alternate ballot designations are provided. Use this page to write the justification for both alternate ballot designations 1 and 2 in the same manner as for the proposed ballot designation on page 2. If this page is not applicable, initial at the top right corner. On the ballot designation worksheet, pages 4, 5, and 6, a candidate will find additional information and instruction on how to fill out the worksheet. So please be sure to read through all pages to ensure the worksheet is filled out in its entirety. On page 4, section 13107 ABC, that's the elections code section, a candidate will find election-related information pertaining to specifically to judicial contests. At this point, I'd like to check in if there are any questions, and if none, I'll then begin sharing information related to the petition for write-in campaign. Okay, go ahead and move on. As discussed earlier, if the incumbent is the only candidate to have filed nomination documents for the office of Superior Court Judge, the contest shall not appear on the June 2nd, 2026 primary ballot unless the following occurs. If within 10 days of filing deadline for the primary election, a petition is submitted to the county elections official that indicates a write-in campaign will be conducted for the office and the proponent has collected enough signatures signed by at least 10% of the registered voters qualified to vote with respect to the office, and provided that the petition contains at least 100 signatures but not contain more than 600 signatures, then the incumbent name will be forced onto the June 2nd, 2026 primary election to allow for a write-in campaign. The ROV will notify the candidate in the event a petition has qualified in this regard. For your information, this has happened in 2 separate elections, forcing a judicial contest to the ballot. Additionally, if the incumbent is the only candidate to have filed nomination documents during the primary election for the office of Superior Court Judge, the contest shall not appear on the November 3rd, 2026 general election ballot unless the following occurs. If by not less than 83 days before the general election, a petition is submitted to the county elections official that indicates a write-in campaign will be conducted for the office, and the proponent has collected enough signatures signed by at least 10% of the registered voters qualified to vote with respect to the office, and provided that the petition contains at least 100 signatures but not contain more than 600 signatures, then the incumbent name will be forced onto the general election if it has not yet appeared on the primary election. Therefore, the ROV will not require the incumbent candidate to file nomination documents for the general election, but he or she has the option to submit a new candidate statement of qualifications form by no later than the end of the nominations period. On this slide, you'll find 2 examples of information we spoke about in previous slides. Scenario 1 provides an example of how a judicial name will remain off ballot for both the primary and general elections. Scenario 2 provides an example of how a judicial name might appear on the ballot due to an incumbent running opposed, a candidate other than the incumbent runs solely or with one or more candidates for that contest, or a qualified petition is filed with the ROV 10 days following the filing deadline for the primary election, or no less than 83 days prior to the general election. At this point, I'd like to check in if there are any questions, and if not, I'll then begin sharing information related to other nomination documents. Okay, hearing none, I'll move on. The candidate information request form, otherwise known as a CIRF, is required to be filed with other nomination documents to ensure ROV staff can receive information such as name, residence, or mailing address, other contact information, and phonetic spelling of a candidate's name. Candidates will receive this form well in advance of other forms, which will help us begin the process of verification and eligibility, as well as confirm certain candidate data that will be entered into our database. Candidates may also provide address information for verification purposes without writing this information in the CIRF. Candidates who have a character-based name, an optional form to fill out would be the preferred transliteration form to allow our ballot layout division to understand best what format the candidate would like their name transliterated on the ballot. The candidate can choose to accept the transliteration of their name provided by the ROV or submit for consideration their own transliteration that the ROV will independently verify. Additionally, that candidate has a choice to accept or opt out of any translations in Spanish and Vietnamese that include the appropriate accents in candidate statements. In order to ensure the name of the candidate is transliterated properly on the ballot, the candidate will need to check if he or she would like their name formatted in masculine, feminine, androgynous, or non-binary, or another format. Also, if the candidate's name has accents or other diacritical marks in an alphabet-based language, and the candidate wishes to include those as part of their name on the official ballot, please also include that information on the declaration of candidacy form. The Vietnamese name accents form, another optional form to submit, allows for a candidate to choose what format their name should be transliterated, such as masculine, feminine, androgynous, non-binary, or another format. Candidates would provide the Vietnamese name characters with the appropriate accents on the form to be verified independently by the ROV or opt out, and accents will not be used on the Vietnamese name in the candidate statement that will be published in the County Voter Information Guide. The Code of Fair Campaign Practices form is another optional form for a candidate to file and provides that the candidate will abide by basic principles of decency, honesty, and fair play throughout the election cycle. The Department of Transportation Statement of Responsibility form is prepared by the state. This form provides instructions on when and where a candidate may place temporary political signs. Candidates will fill out the second page, providing specific information about their candidacy in the upcoming election, and mail the original to the state with a copy to be submitted to the ROV with all other nomination documents. Lastly, you'll need to submit the original Fair Political Practices Commission FPPC forms to the state Secretary of State with a copy to the ROV, including a candidate intention statement, FPPC Form 501. Candidates may also fill out and submit the form at any time prior to the nomination period or file it with all other nomination documents. Instructions on how to properly fill out the form are on page 2, so please thoroughly read that page or contact our office for assistance. Also, the Statement of Economic Interest, FPPC Form 700. You'll fill that out as a candidate and not as an office holder. The candidate will fill out all 5 sections of the cover page and any schedules that apply to their reporting situation. Ensure you check the box for candidate and include the election date of June 2nd, 2026. The candidate can find a link to the electronics Form 700 online portal to file their form under Step 2, Know Your Useful Resources. The assuming office statement will be filed after the election with your filing officer. And I do want to back up for a moment. So you can find the link to the electronic Form 700 online portal to file your Form 700 on the website that I will send to Kimberly, that provides all of this information as well as this recording and the PowerPoint. At this point, I'd like to check in if there are any questions, and if none, then I'll begin wrapping up the presentation. Okay, hearing none. Thank you, judges, for joining us today. We hope that this presentation has provided useful information about your candidacy. As you may already know, we have posted a video of this presentation on our website, so you'll have it as a resource when ready to file your paperwork. If you should think of questions or need assistance with resources, please feel free to contact Candidate Services at our preferred email at candidateservices@rov.sacgov.org or call us directly at 408-299-8639. At this point, I'll open the floor to any last-minute questions before we wrap up. All right, seeing none, then we'll go ahead and wrap up our presentation. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.